One introduction RAWSEP view: the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view: purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning, and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57 DHXU August 2nd, 2025 Nepal is where 76% of cars sold are electric vehicles. Headlines The New York Times August 2nd, 2025 California Eric Holder on why he reversed course on gerrymandering. The New York Times Education and Mental Health Opinion. The future of liberal arts education. The New York Times Exercise and Health Opinion. I am old, but not when I swim. The New York Times New York City cleaner energy for transportation than gas. Guzzling cars take a ride on the Interborough Express. The New York City future train line. The New York Times State and Local Government and State and Local Data RAWSEP view. It is important that United States elect Democratic governors beyond the reach of Trump. From the article headline states, have more data about you than the feds do. Trump wants to see at the New York Times Texas how the new Texas map changes the outlook for control of the House. The New York Times Texas pushes redistricting into an era of maximum warfare. The New York Times Texas State House panel advances gerrymandered congressional map. The New York Times Trump character opinion. South Park skewers a new kind of sanctimony. The New York Times Trump corruption donor list suggests scale of the Trump pay for access operation. The New York Times Trump lack of aviation safety. Army pilots might have struggled to see passenger jet before DC crash. The New York Times Trump tariffs after a lag. Consumers begin to feel the pinch of tariffs. The New York Times Trump tariffs. The stock market is good, bad, and ugly, often in quick succession. The New York Times Trump tariffs. Will the Trump tariffs close income gaps and bring factory jobs back to the U.S.? Probably not. The New York Times Trump and union busting appeals court allows Trump order that ends union protections for federal workers. The New York Times Russia lashing out over Russia and jobs data. Trump displays his volatile side. The New York Times India will buy Russian oil despite the Trump threats. Officials say. The New York Times Nepal, the country where 76% of cars sold are electric. The New York Times Headlines The New York Times August 1st, 2025 Artificial Intelligence Opinion. I am a therapist. ChatGPT is eerily effective. The New York Times California Newsom wants to gerrymander California. Schwarzenegger may disagree. The New York Times California RAWSEP view weather or climate change. From the article headline Why is California so chilly this summer? The New York Times Democrats Biden Mike Donilon had $4 million incentive to secure a 2024 Biden when the New York Times Democrats opinion how Democrats can be relevant again. The New York Times Kamala Harris tells Colbert she wants a break from public office. The New York Times Kamala Harris and her post-election TV diet lots of cooking shows. The New York Times MAGA brain trust Yoram Hazony, the author of The Virtue of Nationalism, discusses the principles of national conservatism. Opinion behind Trump and Vance is the movement of this man. The New York Times Medicine and Science Critical is a powerful and unflinching hospital docuseries. The New York Times Music Ownership. Mick Taylor, human interest versus corporate interest. A former Rolling Stone says the Met has his lost guitar. The museum says no way. The New York Times Musk jury says Tesla was partly to blame for fatal crash. The New York Times New York City RAWSEP view. Even in New York City, neighbors trust neighbors. Democrats should go door to door to gain the trust of voters in order to turn out the vote for Democrats in 2026 and 2028. From the article headline, Do your neighbors trust you? The New York Times New York City mayoral race. Mamdani and conservative India in Delhi and New York Hindu right-wing lines up against Mamdani. The New York Times Pollution RAWSEP view. Nuclear radiation inherent lack of safety of nuclear sites is due to predictable human error. Nuclear energy is too risky to trust to humans. RAWSEP view. Nuclear energy is not clean energy because human error allows radiation leaks and radiation accidents. From the article headline Radioactive wasps found at nuclear site in South Carolina could be a red flag. Expert says. The New York Times Science a woman scientist Mary Gallard who broke a ceiling in subatomic research dies at 86. The New York Times Texas RAWSEP view. Gerrymandering redistricting in favor of Republicans. From the article headline Intense hearing. Texas Republicans defend redrawn political map. The New York Times Trump budget cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich. Senate passes its first spending bills, but battles lie ahead. The New York Times Trump budget cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich. RAWSEP view. Trump threat to public dissemination of information in the form of news. From the article headline Corporation for Public Broadcasting will shut down. The New York Times Trump economics Fed governor resigns, giving Trump opportunity to shape central bank. The New York Times Trump economist Fed dissenters defend call for July rate cut as Trump intensifies attacks on Powell. The New York Times Trump and Epstein fallout opinion with Epstein. Trump betrays his brand. His supporters notice. The New York Times Trump and Epstein fallout. Trump released Venezuelan triple murderer. RAWSEP view shades of Ghislaine Maxwell leniency. From the article headline How U.S. officials grappled with the release of a triple murderer. The New York Times Trump and Epstein fallout opinion. How much has the Epstein case hurt Trump? Polls provide some answers. The New York Times Trump impeachment. Smithsonian removes reference to the Trump impeachments, but says it will return. The New York Times Trump justice corruption. Maxwell moved to minimum security prison after Justice Department questioning the New York Times Trump lack of aviation safety. D.C. inquiry shows how 3 lives intersected before the crash. The New York Times Trump lack of aviation safety after D.C. plane crash. Air traffic controllers were not tested for alcohol. The New York Times Trump lack of aviation safety opinion. A catalog of losses under Trump. The New York Times Trump lack of human safety guardrails. RAWSEP view. More important is the health and safety effects of masks in a time when RFK Jr. has delayed an updated COVID-19 and normal time set for release in the fall of 2025. From the article headline The Politics of Masks. The New York Times Trump MAGA money for future Republican elections. Trump term limited amasses $200 million war chest for political ambitions. The New York Times Trump science. RAWSEP view. Trump science is ignorant and not based on evidence. Sugar is sugar whether cane sugar or corn syrup. The taste of someone who drinks cola to begin with is flawed. From the article headline Is cola with cane sugar actually better? We did a taste test. The New York Times Trump tariffs ahead of the Trump trade deadline. Firms rushed goods out of duty-free warehouses. The New York Times Trump tariffs harm or help? Why companies are battling tariffs meant to benefit them. The New York Times Trump tariffs after a weak jobs report. Trump says he is Firing the commissioner of that agency, the New York Times. Trump tariffs and Trump budget cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich. Opinion is the Trump economy starting to crack? The New York Times. Trump tariffs and Trump budget cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich. Opinion, what is really driving your retirement account? The New York Times. Trump tariffs and weak jobs report prompt market sell-off. Live updates. The New York Times. Trump tariffs. Trump turns to untested tariffs to reorder global trade. The New York Times. Trump tariffs and Trump budget cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich. U.S. hiring slowed in July, adding 73,000 jobs. The New York Times. Trump tariff stock market posts worst week in months on renewed economic fears. The New York Times. Trump and threats to universities. Virginia Education Board could oust the president of George Mason University. The New York Times. Canada. Trump tariffs. Trump gives Mexico a reprieve but slams Canada with higher tariffs. The New York Times. Denmark moral fables. 150 years after the death of Hans Christian Andersen, his work is still haunting. The New York Times. Switzerland. Trump tariff. Switzerland is stunned by 39 U.S. tariff, among the highest in the world. The New York Times. Russia. Trump says he ordered nuclear submarines repositioned after threats from Medvedev. The New York Times. Russia and Trump. 2016 RAWSEP view. Trump helped by Russian plan. Clinton plan emails. From the article headline, Clinton plan emails were likely made by Russian spies. Declassified report shows. The New York Times. Russia and Ukraine. Putin blames frustration over Ukraine talks on inflated expectations. The New York Times. Lesotho, how the threat of the Trump highest tariff derailed an African nation. The New York Times. China. Trump tariffs with new 40% tariff. Trump takes aim at U.S. dependence on factories in China. The New York Times. Taiwan. Trump tariffs. U.S. tariffs land on Taiwan amid tension with Washington. The New York Times. Headline: The Guardian, August 2nd, 2025. Artificial intelligence. Big tech has spent $155 billion on AI this year. It is about to spend hundreds of billions more. Artificial intelligence, AI. The Guardian. Climate change. RAWSEP view. RAWSEP hopes that the Guardian is not lumping dirty renewables like biofuels and wood burning among the renewables touted here. From the article headline, The Guardian view on the green transition. Renewables are the future, but the actions of countries must catch up with their promises. Editorial. The Guardian. Economics. Paying to attend weddings of strangers? As if we are real guests. The startup selling strangers invitations to weddings. The Guardian. RAWSEP view. How make small talk at weddings, even weddings for strangers that you pay to attend. From the article headline, The New Rules of Small Talk. How to nail every conversation from first dates to weddings, parties, and funerals. Social etiquette. The Guardian. Inequality. RAWSEP view. History shows that income inequality leads to societal collapse. From the article headline, Self-termination is most likely the history and future of societal collapse. Environment. The Guardian. Technology. Enough of the billionaires and their big tech. Frugal tech will build us all a better world. Eleanor Drage. The Guardian. Trump conspiracy theories about Democrats, namely Obama-Durham disclosures, further undermine the Tulsi Gabbard claims of plot against Trump. The Guardian. Trump and Epstein fallout. Ghislaine Maxwell could talking about Epstein be or get out of jail free card. Ghislaine Maxwell. The Guardian. Trump and Epstein fallout. The inside story of the Murdoch editor taking on Donald Trump. Wall Street Journal. The Guardian. Trump and Epstein fallout. The simple way Democrats should talk about Trump and Epstein. Peter Rothplatz. The Guardian. Trump lack of wildfire safety. The U.S. is woefully underprepared for wildfire season, say insiders. The stakes are life and death. U.S. wildfires. The Guardian. Trump lack of wildfire safety too. Wildfires in U.S. West spur fire clouds with erratic weather systems. U.S. wildfires. The Guardian. Trump and roadblocks for Trump. The courts. How the courts became the biggest roadblock to the Trump plans. U.S. News. The Guardian. Trump tariffs. Trump fires labor statistics chief hours after data showed jobs growth slowed. Trump administration. The Guardian. Trump is threat to human safety. RAWSEP view. Note the name of this man, Chris Booth, and block him for your own health and safety. From the article headline, Unmask the man behind one of the fastest growing far-right YouTube channels. Far-right U.S. The Guardian. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. YouTube channels. The Chris Booth channel, rife with neo-Nazi ideology, anti-Semitism, and racism, garnered 2.3 million views and likely thousands of dollars for YouTube in about 2 months. August 2nd, 2025. The Guardian has identified the self-described National Socialist behind an openly extremist YouTube channel that in just over 2 months has accumulated 50,000 subscribers, seen more than 2.3 million views, and likely made thousands of dollars from the YouTube revenue sharing monetization program. Jonathan Christopher Chris Booth, 37, lives in the unincorporated community of Coral, a part of Maple Valley Township in Montcalm County in Michigan, and is married to a senior local Republican official. Booth has published more than 70 YouTube videos since May on his Shameless Spurred account, whose graphic design elements feature stylized SS. Both United States. RAWSEP view. Downward or upward mobility. From the article headline, I have moved 28 times in my lifetime. This is the story of a new America family. The Guardian. Scandinavia. RAWSEP view. Climate change caused by air pollution. Air pollution from wood burning contributes to climate change. Just do not burn wood to begin with. From the article headline, Nordic countries hit by truly unprecedented heat wave. Climate crisis. The Guardian. Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's Corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies, which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American. Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
1. Introduction. RAWSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.